The massive ships appeared without warning on a Tuesday morning, their hulls gleaming like silver tears against Earth's blue sky. 12 vessels, each the size of Manhattan, hung motionless above major population centers. No atmospheric disturbance, no sonic booms. They simply materialized as if the universe had decided to redecorate. Sarah Chun pressed her face against the window of the United Nations building in New York, watching the ship's shadow crawl across Central Park like a living thing. As Earth's chief xenological advisor, she spent 20 years preparing for this moment. Every simulation, every theoretical framework, every sleepless night wondering if humanity was alone, all of it led to this Tuesday that would rewrite history. Dr. Chun, they're requesting immediate communication with world leaders. The aide's voice cracked with nervous energy. They're speaking perfect English. All languages, actually, simultaneously. Sarah pulled herself away from the window and straightened her jacket. The weight of representing humanity in first contact pressed down on her shoulders like gravity itself. Patch them through to the main conference room and get me every head of state online in the next 10 minutes. The conference room filled quickly with the blue glow of holographic world leaders. President Morrison from the United States appeared first, followed by Premier Chong from China, Chancellor Weber from Germany, and 15 others. Each face carried the same expression, a mixture of wonder, terror, and barely contained panic. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a being that looked almost disappointingly human. Tall, elegant, with pale blue skin and eyes like liquid mercury. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of ancient wisdom and barely concealed impatience. I am Ambassador Kethril of the Galactic Confederation. We come bearing urgent news for the species you call humanity. The ambassador's image was crystal clear, but somehow seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Your world faces imminent destruction from an enemy you cannot comprehend, possess no defense against, and have no hope of defeating alone. President Morrison leaned forward. What enemy? What threat? The Devourers, Kethril replied, and even to the translation matrix, the word carried an echo of cosmic dread. A species that consumes worlds, strips them of all organic matter, and leaves behind barren husks. They move through space like a plague, and they have detected your planet's biological signature. Chancellor Weber's face paled. How long do we have? 18 of your months. Perhaps less. The ambassador's expression remained neutral, as if discussing weather patterns rather than planetary extinction. The Confederation has monitored your species for some time. We find your cultural diversity interesting. Your technological advancement, while primitive, shows promise. We are prepared to offer protection. Sarah felt ice form in her veins. 20 years of preparation hadn't prepared her for this. What kind of protection? Complete integration into the Confederation's defensive network. Our ships will establish permanent orbital platforms around your world. Our military will coordinate your defensive capabilities. Our technology will be gradually introduced to bring you to acceptable standards. Kethril paused, as if choosing words carefully. In return, Earth becomes protectorate of the Confederation. Your governments remain, but operate under our guidance. Your military answers to our command structure. Your expansion beyond this system requires our approval. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. 18 months to live free, or eternity under alien rule. It wasn't really a choice at all. Premier Chong spoke first. What guarantees do we have that you will honor this agreement? The Confederation has protected 17 species over the past millennium. All remain prosperous members of our alliance. Kethril's mercury eyes reflected something that might have been amusement. The alternative, I remind you, is complete extinction. President Morrison's jaw tightened. We'll need time to discuss this among ourselves. You have 72 hours. The ambassador's image began to fade. Choose wisely. The Devourers show no mercy to species who refuse protection. The screen went dark, leaving the world leaders staring at their own reflections in the black surface. Sarah could hear her heartbeat echoing in the sudden silence. Outside, the alien ships continued their silent vigil, casting shadows that seemed to swallow light itself. President Morrison was the first to speak. Options. Limited, Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. If they're telling the truth about this devourer threat, we're talking about species survival. If they're lying... She let the implication hang in the air like smoke. Conquest through manufactured crisis. Premier Chong finished. Classic strategy. Chancellor Weber pulled up a holographic display showing global military assets. Our combined forces couldn't scratch one of those ships. We've run every simulation since they arrived. Nuclear weapons, kinetic strikes, electromagnetic pulses. Nothing penetrates their shielding. Sarah walked to the window again, watching people in the street below pointing at the sky. Some were taking pictures. Some were running. Some just stood frozen, like deer caught in headlights. All of them trusting their leaders to make the right choice. But what was right when every option led to the death of freedom? There's something else, she said, turning back to the room. In all my years studying theoretical xenology, one constant emerged. Species that offer protection without being asked usually have ulterior motives, and species that impose arbitrary deadlines are usually lie about the urgency, Morrison finished. But can we take that risk? The question hung in the air like a sword suspended by silk thread. In 72 hours, humanity would either bow its head in submission or raise its fist in defiance. Either way, Tuesday had become the day that changed everything. Outside, the alien ships waited with infinite patience, their shadows growing longer as the sun moved across the sky. The decision came faster than Sarah expected. 60 hours instead of 72. Fear had a way of accelerating democracy. She stood in the same conference room where humanity had first learned of its mortality, watching the holographic signatures appear one by one on the Confederation Protection Pact. Each name felt like a nail in freedom's coffin, but what choice did they have? Extinction wasn't negotiable. It's done, President Morrison announced, his voice hollow with the weight of species-wide surrender. Dr. Chun, please inform Ambassador Kethrel that Earth formally accepts Confederation protection. Sarah activated the communication ray, and within seconds, Kethrel's serene face materialized on screen. If the ambassador felt any satisfaction at humanity's capitulation, those mercury eyes revealed nothing. A wise choice, Kethrel said. Integration begins immediately. Our defense platforms will be operational within 48 hours. Your military commanders will report to Confederation Central Command for briefing and reassignment. General Patricia Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, stepped forward. Her weathered face carried the scars of 3 wars and the stubborn pride of someone who'd never retreated from a fight. Ambassador will need detailed intelligence on these devourers. Force composition, tactical capabilities, typical engagement patterns. My people don't fight blind. Kethrel's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. General Hayes, your forces will not be engaged in devourers directly. Confederation policy prohibits newly protected species from frontline combat roles. Too dangerous. Too unpredictable. Hayes' eyes narrowed. Unpredictable? New species often lack the discipline required for coordinated galactic warfare. Your role will be planetary security and logistical support. The ambassador's tone remained maddeningly patient. The Confederation has defended against devourer incursions 47 times. We know it works. Sarah felt something cold crawl up her spine. In all her xenological studies, she'd learned that military species, truly dangerous ones, never excluded potential allies from combat. They used every available resource. The fact that the Confederation wanted to keep human forces away from the actual fighting raised questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. Ambassador, she interjected, could we review some of your previous successful defenses? Historical data would help us understand our role better. Kethrel's pause lasted exactly 3 seconds too long. Classified information, Dr. Chun, Confederation security protocols. I'm sure you understand. She understood perfectly. In her experience, people who couldn't provide proof of their claims usually couldn't because the proof didn't exist. General Hayes stepped closer to the screen, her presence filling the room like compressed energy. How many ships will Confederation deploy for Earth's defense? A standard protection fleet, 12 vessels, Same as currently in orbit. 12 ships against a species-killing threat. Hayes' voice carried the dangerous calm of a predator sensing weakness. Ambassador, I've commanded fleets in 3 different combat theaters. Defensive operations against extinction-level threats require massive force deployment, overlapping coverage, redundant systems, multiple fallback positions. 12 ships sound like a patrol, not a defense. For the first time, Kethral's composure cracked slightly. General, the Confederation has protected 17 species with standard fleets. Our technology is far superior to anything the Devourers possess. Then why, Hayes continued relentlessly, do you need 18 months to prepare? Superior technology should mean rapid deployment, not lengthy preparation periods. Sarah watched the ambassador's face carefully. Every micro-expression, every pause, every unconscious gesture. Kethral was lying. She was certain now. The question was why. General Hayes raises valid tactical concerns, Sarah said carefully. Perhaps we could contribute more effectively if we understood the broader strategic picture. Your contribution, Kethral replied, still creeping into that patient voice, is to accept protection and allow the Confederation to do what it does best. Further questions about operational details serve no constructive purpose. The room fell silent. On the screen, Kethral waited with the stillness of carved stone. Around the table, world leaders exchanged glances loaded with unspoken communication. Sarah could feel the moment balancing on a knife's edge. General Hayes broke the silence with a question that shattered everything. Ambassador, if the Devourers are such an unstoppable threat, and your technology is so superior, why do you need our permission to place defense platforms in our system? Her voice cut through diplomatic pretense like a blade through silk. Why not just deploy your fleet and protect us whether we agree or not? Why does a species facing extinction need to sign a protection pact? Kethral's face went completely blank. 4 or 5 heartbeats. The ambassador said nothing. When words finally came, they carried a weight that changed the entire conversation. Because, General Hayes, Confederation law requires formal consent before establishing permanent military presence in any system, even for protection purposes. Even when that species faces extinction? Another pause, longer this time, especially then. Sarah felt pieces clicking together in her mind like tumblers in a lock. A species that could easily protect Earth without permission, but required formal consent anyway. A threat that necessitated 18 months of preparation despite superior technology. A protection fleet smaller than any reasonable defensive deployment. General Hayes leaned back in her chair, and Sarah saw something she'd never seen in the woman's eyes before. Not fear, not uncertainty. Something far more dangerous. Recognition. Ambassador, Hayes said quietly, I have one final question before we proceed with integration protocols. Yes. The general's next words fell into room like stones into still water, sending ripples that would reach the edges of the galaxy. What happens if we change our minds? The silence that followed lasted exactly long enough for everyone in the room to understand that they just asked the one question the Confederation had hoped they'd never think to ask. Kethral's answer would determine whether humanity lived free or died free, but it would not live enslaved, not without a fight. Ambassador Kethral's expression froze, like ice crystallizing in deep space. The question hung between dimensions, waiting for an answer that would reshape the future of human civilization. Change of minds. Kethral's voice carried a note Sarah had never heard before. Uncertainty. The pact has been signed by all recognized Earth governments. Legal proceedings are complete. General Hayes stood slowly, her movements deliberate and predatory. That wasn't my question, Ambassador. My question was simple. What happens if we change our minds? The pause stretched into eternity. Through the window, Sarah could see the Confederation ships adjusting their positions, moving from a protective formation into something that looked distinctly more like a blockade. The Confederation has significant resources invested in Earth's defense, Kethral finally replied. Withdrawal protection would require extensive negotiations. Negotiations. Hayes repeated the word like it tasted bitter. Not approval, not agreement. Negotiations. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Every xenological principle she'd studied pointed to the same conclusion. Species didn't negotiate with subordinates. They negotiated with equals, and equals could say no. President Morrison leaned forward, his political instincts finally catching up to the subtext. Ambassador, are you saying that once we accept Confederation protection, we cannot refuse it? I am saying, Kethel replied carefully, that protection arrangements, once established, are not easily dissolved. The administrative complexities alone cut the diplomatic doublespeak, Hayes interrupted, her voice cutting through pretense like a plasma torch. Yes or no? Can Earth withdraw from Confederation protection? The ambassador's silence was answer enough. Sarah felt the last piece of the puzzle snap into place with horrifying clarity. There are no devourers, she said quietly. Every head in the room turned toward her. On the screen, Kethral's face went completely expressionless. Dr. Chun, President Morrison warned, that's a serious accusation. It's the only explanation that fits all the data. Sarah stood, her voice gaining strength with each word. A real extinction threat will require massive defensive deployments, not 12 ships. A real protection force will want every available asset in the fight, not exclude human military from combat. A real ally wouldn't require legal consent to save a species from annihilation. She turned to face Kethral directly. You're not here to protect us. You're here to conquer us. The Protection Pact isn't a defense agreement. It's a surrender document. Kethral's composure finally shattered completely. Dr. Chun, you fundamentally misunderstand galactic politics. The Confederation brings peace, prosperity, and protection to primitive species. Without our guidance, your world faces chaos, war, and eventual self-destruction. Whose choice is that? Hayes demanded. Ours or yours? Sometimes, Kethral replied, and now Sarah could hear the true voice beneath the diplomatic veneer. Cold, calculating, absolute. Civilized species must make difficult decisions for the greater good. The room exploded into angry voices as world leaders realized they'd been played. But Sarah was watching the screens, showing global positioning data. The Confederation ships were moving again, descending into lower orbits. Weapons systems were coming online. They're not waiting for negotiations, she announced over the chaos. Look at the orbital displays. They're taking defensive positions around major population centers. General Hayes pulled up military tracking data. Her face grim. Weapons platforms are targeting our major military installations, communication hubs, and government centers. This isn't protection positioning. It's occupation deployment. President Morrison's face went white. How long before they're in position? 16 minutes, Hayes replied. Then she asked the question that would define humanity's future. Do we fight? The silence that followed was different from the earlier pauses. This wasn't uncertainty or political calculation. This was the moment when a species decided what it was willing to die for. With what? Chancellor Weber asked desperately. You said yourself our weapons can't penetrate their shields. I said our conventional weapons can't penetrate their shields, Hayes corrected. But conventional warfare isn't our only option. Sarah saw something shift in the general's expression, a calculation being made, a terrible equation balance between freedom and survival. General, she said quietly, what are you thinking? Hayes looked around the room at the assembled leaders of human civilization. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of species-wide consequence. The Confederation made one critical error. They assumed we'd fight like them. Organized, predictable, following galactic rules of engagement. Her smile held all the warmth of winter stars. They've never encountered humans in actual combat. What does that mean? President Morrison asked. It means they don't understand what we're capable of when someone threatens our home. Hayes turned to the communication array. Ambassador Kethral, I have a message to the Confederation. The alien's face reappeared on screen, now showing open contempt instead of diplomatic courtesy. General Hayes, resistance is pointless. Your weapons cannot harm our vessels. Your defenses cannot stop our landing forces. Surrender now, and the transition to Confederation rule will be relatively painless. Hayes' smile widened. Ambassador, You misunderstand our capabilities. We don't need to destroy your ships. Then what possible threat could you pose? The general's next words sent ice through Sarah's veins and fire through her heart simultaneously. We have nuclear weapons, Ambassador. Lots of them. And if Earth becomes a Confederation protectorate against our will, we'll detonate every single warhead in our arsenal simultaneously. Kethral's expression shifted from contempt to confusion. That would destroy your own planet. Yes, Hayes replied simply. It would. The silence that followed lasted exactly long enough for our alien species to realize they'd just encountered something they'd never faced before in their 1,000 years of galactic conquest. A species that would choose extinction over slavery. The words hung in space like a nuclear countdown, ticking toward zero. On the screen, Ambassador Kethral's face cycled through expressions no universal translator could interpret: confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been the first whisper of fear. General Hayes, Kethral said slowly, you cannot be serious. No rational species would choose planetary annihilation over peaceful integration. Hayes leaned back in her chair with the casual confidence of someone holding a dead man's hand in the galaxy's highest-stakes poker game. Ambassador, that's your fundamental misunderstanding of humanity. We're not entirely rational. It's what makes us dangerous. Sarah watched the orbital displays as Confederation ships hesitated in their descent. For the first time since their arrival, the alien fleet showed uncertainty in their movements. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination now held position, awaiting orders that weren't coming. This is madness, Kethel insisted. You would murder billions of your own people rather than accept protection and guidance. We would choose freedom over survival, President Morrison replied, and Sarah heard something in his voice she'd never heard before, the quiet certainty of someone who'd found something worth dying for. But, Ambassador, you're missing the larger point, which is... Sarah stepped forward, understanding blooming in her mind like a dangerous flower. You need Earth intact. Living planets have value. Dead ones don't. Which means your threat is actually our leverage. Kethral's mercury eyes narrowed. Explain. The Confederation doesn't go around protecting species out of altruism. You do it because living worlds generate resources, technology, cultural diversity, value that dead planets can't provide. Sarah's voice gained confidence as the pieces assembled themselves. If we detonate our nuclear arsenal, Earth becomes worthless to you, a radioactive monument to the price of forcing protection on species that don't want it. General Hayes nodded approvingly. Furthermore, Ambassador, consider the precedent. If news spreads to your 17 other protected species that Earth chose extinction over Confederation rule, how long before other worlds start asking uncomfortable questions about their own protection arrangements? For the first time since first contact, Kethral looked genuinely rattled. You're threatening galactic stability over primitive notions of independence. We're threatening galactic tyranny over fundamental notions of freedom. Hayes corrected. There's a difference. The communication array crackled with incoming transmissions. Sarah pulled up the data streams and felt her heart skip. General, I'm reading massive energy buildups from all 12 Confederation ships. They're powering weapon systems. Predictable, Hayes replied calmly. They're going to call our bluff. What if it's not a bluff? Chancellor Weber asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Hayes turned to look at each world leader in turn. Then we find out what humanity is really made of. Sarah pulled up global military networks, watching as nuclear facilities across 6 continents came online. Russia's mobile launchers emerged from hidden silos. America's submarine fleet surfaced in coordinated positions. China's deep mountain installations opened blast doors that hadn't moved in decades. Britain, France, India, Pakistan, Israel. Every nuclear power on Earth simultaneously prepared for the ultimate act of defiance. This is insane, Weber repeated, but Sarah noticed he was authorizing German cooperation with the nuclear coordination protocols. Insanity, Hayes replied, is sometimes the only rational response in a rational situation. On screen, Kethel was clearly receiving communications from the Confederation fleet. The ambassador's composed mask was cracking, revealing something underneath that looked almost human. Desperation. General Hayes, The Confederation cannot allow this precedent. If Earth destroys itself rather than accept protection, other species might choose similar extremes. The Galactic Order requires stability. Then withdraw your ships, Hayes said simply. Impossible. The resources invested, the political implications. Not our problem. Hayes stood and walked a window, looking up at the alien ships that had seemed so invincible just hours before. Now they hung in the sky like uncertain predators, suddenly aware their prey had developed fangs. Ambassador, let me explain something about human nature that your 1,000 years of galactic experience apparently missed. I'm listening. When you corner a human, they don't submit. They don't negotiate. They don't look for rational solutions. Her voice carried the weight of every war humanity had ever fought, every impossible victory against overwhelming odds. They bite hard, and they keep biting until either they're dead or their enemy is bleeding. Sarah watched global readiness indicators turn from yellow to orange to red. Every nuclear weapon on Earth was now armed and targeted. Not at the Confederation ships. That would be useless. At Earth itself. Capitals, population centers, industrial complexes, agricultural regions. A coordinated suicide that would render the planet uninhabitable for the next 1,000 years. The nuclear systems are fully operational, she reported quietly. Dead man switches are active. If Confederation forces attempt to prevent detonation or neutralize our leadership, the weapons fire automatically. Kethral's face had gone completely pale. You cannot mean this. We absolutely mean this, Morrison replied. Earth will be free or Earth will be ash. Those are your only options. The ambassador disappeared from the screen for exactly 47 seconds. When the image returned, Kethra looked like someone who just received very unpleasant news from very angry superiors. The Confederation requires time to consider this development. You have 5 minutes, Hayes said flatly. After that, we assume you've chosen occupation and respond accordingly. Sarah felt time compress around them, each second stretching like heated metal. For minutes, 3, 2, outside, the Confederation ships began to move. But they weren't descending toward Earth. They were retreating to higher orbits. Ambassador, Hayes said, her voice carrying quiet satisfaction, are you withdrawing? The Confederation is reassessing Earth's readiness for protection services. Translation, you're leaving, temporarily, until your species develops more mature decision-making processes. Sarah almost laughed at the absurdity. A galactic civilization with technology beyond human comprehension had just been outmaneuvered by the simple threat of mutual, assured destruction. How long until your reassessment is complete? She asked. Kethral's answer sent chills down her spine. However long it takes, Dr. Chun. The Confederation is patient. Eventually, your species will require our protection. And when that day comes, we will be waiting. The screen went dark, but Sarah knew this wasn't victory. It was just the end of the first round. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the same conference room where humanity had first learned it wasn't alone in the universe. The alien ships were gone, but their absence felt more ominous than their presence ever had. Empty space could hide infinite threats. Final report, Dr. Chun, President Morrison requested, though they both knew this was far from final. It was just the end of the beginning. Sarah activated the holographic display, showing data accumulated since the Confederation's withdrawal. The picture it painted was both encouraging and terrifying. Global unity is at historical highs. Nuclear weapon systems have been upgraded and redistributed. Early warning networks are operating at maximum efficiency. Joint military exercises have improved coordination between all major powers. The good news, General Hayes added grimly, is that we're more prepared for external threats than we've ever been. The bad news is that we've essentially painted a target on our entire species. The data streams continue to flow across the displays. Deep space monitoring stations had detected 17 different probe signatures in the past month. Ships from civilizations humanity had never heard of, all suddenly interested in the species that had made the Galactic Confederation blink. They're studying us, Sarah continued. Not just the Confederation. Multiple species. Our little standoff has attracted attention from across the galaxy. Chancellor Weber's image flickered on screen from Berlin. Attention from potential allies or potential threats? Both, Hayes replied. Intelligence suggests at least 3 other species have successfully resisted Confederation protection. They're reaching out through carefully coded transmissions. But there are also species that view our defiance as dangerous instability that needs to be corrected. Sarah pulled up the communication logs that had been arriving through quantum channels since the standoff, messages hidden in cosmic background radiation, encoded in gravitational wave fluctuations, transmitted through methods that push the boundaries of physics itself. The most interesting contact came from someone calling themselves the Free Fleet Coalition, she reported. Apparently, there's an entire network of species that have rejected Confederation protection. They want to meet. And the concerning contacts? Morrison asked. Hayes grimaced. The hegemony of ordered worlds. The Stability Collective. The Galactic Peace Enforcement Division. All of them view what we did as dangerous precedent that threatens established order. They're discussing intervention. Sarah felt the weight of cosmic politics pressing down on her shoulders. Humanity had won its freedom through the threat of mutual assured destruction, but victory had consequences. Earth was now a known quantity in galactic affairs, a species willing to choose death over submission. That made them either a valuable ally or an existential threat, depending on your perspective. Recommendations? Morrison asked. We build, Hayes said simply. Ships, weapons, defenses, alliances. We have maybe 5 years before someone decides Earth's independence is too dangerous to ignore. When they come, and they will come, we need to be ready to fight. Sarah nodded agreement. The Free Fleet Coalition is offering technological exchanges. Faster-than-light communication, advanced propulsion, weapon systems that can actually damage Confederation ships. In return, they want access to human military doctrine and tactical innovation. What makes our military doctrine valuable to advanced civilizations? Weber asked. Hayes smiled, and Sarah saw in that expression all the dangerous creativity that had made humanity the apex predator on a planet full of apex predators. Because we think differently. Every other species they've encountered fights rationally. They use superior technology, greater numbers, better strategy. They fight to win. We don't fight to win? Morrison asked, confused. We fight to hurt. Sarah realized, the pieces clicking together in her mind. When humans fight, the goal isn't just victory. It's making the enemy pay such a high price that they never want to fight us again. Pyrrhic victory is still victory. Exactly, Hayes confirmed. The Confederation expected rational cost-benefit analysis. Instead, they got a species willing to commit planetary suicide rather than surrender. That's not just alien to them. It's completely outside their psychological framework. The implications were staggering. Humanity's greatest weakness, their tendency towards self-destructive behavior when cornered, had become their greatest strategic asset in galactic politics. The Free Fleet wants to establish a base in our outer system, Sarah continued. Hidden behind Jupiter, away from potential surveillance. They'll provide advanced technology and training in exchange for joint military operations against Confederation expansion. Morrison leaned back in his chair, the weight of species-wide decision-making etched into every line of his face. We're talking about joining an interstellar war. We're talking about surviving it. Hayes corrected. The war is coming whether we participate or not. The only question is whether we face it with stone knives and bare skins, or with weapons that can actually damage our enemies. Sarah pulled up one final data stream, long-range sensors showing massive ship movements in distant star systems, fleets massing, supply lines extending, battle groups forming around strategic positions. The galaxy was preparing for something big. The Confederation isn't done with Earth, she announced. Intelligence suggests they're building a coalition of their own, species that view our independence as a threat to galactic stability. They're calling it the Pacification Fleet. The room fell silent as the full implication sank in. Humanity had 6 months to go from planetary species to interstellar power. 6 months to build weapons, forge alliances, and prepare for a war that would determine whether freedom or order ruled the galaxy. motioned to accept the Free Fleet Coalition's proposal. Hayes said formally, "Seconded." Weber's voice came through the communication array. One by one, the world leaders voted. When the final tally appeared on screen, Sarah felt history pivot around them like a planet changing orbital direction. Unanimous approval. "Dr. Chun," Morrison said quietly, "prepare a message for the Free Fleet Coalition. Tell them Earth is ready to learn how to fight among the stars." As Sarah composed humanity's first declaration of interstellar war, she looked out the window at the empty sky where alien ships had once threatened their world. Soon, human ships would fill that same space, carrying weapons designed by species that understood the galaxy's true nature. The Confederation had offered Earth protection, then tried to force it upon them. Now humanity would offer the galaxy something far more dangerous than protection. They would offer freedom. And anyone who tried to stop them would learn why humans were the species that chose mutual annihilation over surrender. The stars themselves were about to discover what happened when you cornered something with nothing left to lose. The end.